Welcome back, team. Let's talk about the cons of working at a startup. If you haven't already seen my video talking about the pros of working at a startup, I highly recommend you go and check that out. But in this video, I have 5 major cons for you all, so let's get into them. Okay, so the very first con of working at a startup is you need to ramp up extremely fast with little to no training, may I add. This may be to the point where you literally do not have the time to learn at the pace that you can, so that you put unnecessary stress on yourself and others have expectations that you probably cannot meet. So this makes a concoction for absolute disaster. It's such a stressful time, trying to ramp up to the point, that the startup needs you, them having expectations on you, you needing to learn as an intern, and just needing to do that super fast. It's extremely stressful. I cannot stress that enough. Pun intended. Now, 2, there's often no clear organizational structure in startups. Now, some of you may actually like this in theory. However, why I list this as a con is because even though you may have an official boss, you don't actually know who you're reporting to and who needs to know the day-to-day activities that you're up to. Now, this is the perfect recipe for miscommunication and a lot of stressful situations, because you may not report things to the person that needs to be reported to, but you didn't know that because they're not your official boss, and so on and so forth. So this entire idea of having no clear organization is not fun to deal with and navigate, because you just do not know who you're reporting to, and this causes a lot of confusion and miscommunication. I promise you. Now, con number 3, and this is pretty popular in startup culture, and that is there is almost little to none work-life balance. Almost everyone is overworked or feels like they have to overwork. Now, temporarily, I feel like this is something that can be done, gotta meet the needs of the company and so on and so forth. But long term, which is how it is at startups usually, it's just not sustainable as a lifestyle, and so it's a con definitely to take into consideration. Now, con number 4, and this is another obvious one, and that is pay and perks. So because startups are usually funded, that means that you won't be getting paid big bucks anytime soon. What you hear about from the big tech companies, you're definitely not going to be paid that amount, and it's kind of you're growing with the company type of thing. So that's definitely something to take into consideration, because there's not a lot, if any, perks at startups, and the pay is minimal usually. Now, number 5, and this is a big one, at least for me, because leadership is super important in my eyes, and that is leadership may or may not be great. That is a gamble you're taking if you're going to be working for a startup. Now, what I mean by this is, at a startup, they're really just focused on growing and surviving. They don't invest any time, and they may invest some minimal time, but really it's close to no time in leadership and management. Now, what this means is that you may get lucky if the startup just has naturally great leaders. However, if you don't have naturally great leaders at your startup, then it may get toxic very fast, like extremely fast, to the point where you're just like, I am suffocating. So it's very important to focus on, is there leadership and management at the startup you're considering going into? Because if there isn't, are you going to have to deal with toxic culture and people, which is not fun. It is not fun. All right, so those are the 5 big cons of working at a startup. that I believe you need to take into consideration when considering working at a startup. I hope these have helped you if you're making a decision like that, and if not, it's useful information to have because you may or may not come into that situation in the future. So with that, you know what I'm gonna say? Until next time.